When I was little, I saw things I still can't explain. If you dig deep enough into your childhood memories, you can probably recall at least one strange thing, not necessarily scary, that happened to you when you were little. I'm no exception. In fact, weird stuff has been happening to me all my life and still does to this day. But this story isn't about that. I was born in the late 80s, in the last years of the USSR. When I was about a year and a half old, my parents got assigned, by distribution, a Soviet system where university graduates were sent to work in specific places, to some godforsaken village in the middle of nowhere. No running water, no sewer system, and the single store had nothing but vinegar and stale bread. They were given a single room in a wooden barracks, temporary workers' housing, cold in winter and full of mice and cockroaches. When my grandmother got my mother's first letter about this wonderful new place where they'd be living for the next 3 years, she didn't hesitate. She showed up with 2 bags of food, took me, along with my tiny clothes and rattles, and brought me to her apartment in a small provincial town in southern Russia. Her reasoning? You deal with your job placements and your mice. I'm taking the baby somewhere she won't get her nose bitten off in her sleep. That's how I started living with Grandma. She had a small Khrushchevka, a Soviet-era small apartment in a 5-story building. 1 room, a kitchenette, and a built-in wall fridge under the window, a kind of cold storage box common in Soviet apartments. But it was cozy. She lived there with my young aunt and uncle, and now me. It was during that time that the first strange thing happened. I don't think anyone else would call it scary. I'd been raised on fairy tales and scary movies, but it stayed with me all my life. Our apartment building stood a little off the main street. Across the road was a tall concrete wall, and behind it, a squat 2-story building. We never saw any signs of life there, even though my friends and I would later peek through every crack in that wall. Grandma had gout, and her legs would ache at night. To let others sleep, she'd go sit outside on the swings in the courtyard until the pain went away. Sometimes she had company, other grandmothers who couldn't sleep, each with their own reason. They'd sit, drink tea from thermoses, and chat in the warm summer dark. Sometimes I'd wake up and demand to join them. One night, while Grandma and her friends sat on the big swing bench near the front entrance, I wandered over to the smaller swing set near the far end of the building. That's when I noticed it was too bright, brighter than the street lamp. I turned toward the empty lot beyond the building and saw it, a massive, impossibly huge moon hanging low to the ground. Not big moon big, but storybook big. So large it seemed you could walk up and touch it. It was bluish white, glowing, with sharp black silhouettes of trees behind it. I spun around to point it out to Grandma, and froze. She and her friends were all standing, staring in my direction, completely still. When I waved, Grandma suddenly rushed toward me, faster than I thought possible with her bad legs, scooped me up, and carried me inside. I kicked and argued, telling her we had to go back and look, that I'd never seen anything so beautiful. But she wouldn't listen. We ran up to her apartment, and that was it. I never asked her why she reacted like that. Maybe they saw something I didn't. Or maybe if I saw something like that now, I'd be the one running for the door. A few months later, winter by then, my parents returned, having somehow gotten transferred to our town. For a month, they stayed with us. 6 people crammed into a 15-square-meter room, typical Soviet living situation. Then they got their own room in a malosemyeka, a type of Soviet dormitory for small families, basically 1 room with shared facilities. I was given a small bed with bars, the kind meant for toddlers. My first night there, I woke in the dark to music. I don't know how to describe it exactly. Slow, heavy drum beats, building in intensity with a piercing, whining sound layered over them. My bed started to shake. And then, from the darkness between the bed and the wall, a woman's hand appeared. It wasn't gnarled or rotting like in horror movies. It was beautiful, pale, manicured, with long red nails and a ring with a big stone. The fingers slipped between the bars of my bed, and in that moment, I knew if she touched me, I would die. I couldn't move or breathe until finally I let out a scream that woke the whole floor. The same thing happened the next night, and the next. Always the music, the shaking bed, and the hand. One day, my father, tired of reading to me for hours every night, I refused to sleep until they did, he taught me to read just so I could entertain myself. As a reward, I got a shiny blue tricycle. Since it was winter, I rode it in the dormitory hallways, which, to my child's mind, were endless and twisting. One day, I was pedaling past a stairwell when I saw a man standing in the doorway. His face was hidden in shadow, but he held a large sack in one hand. I kept going until the next stairwell, where he was again, the same man. This time, as I passed, he stepped forward and grabbed the back of my tricycle. I turned and saw his face. It was twisted in pure hatred. I don't know how else to describe it. I was just a little girl in a bunny print snowsuit on a blue tricycle with streamers on the handlebars. There was no reason for anyone to hate me, but he did. And he started dragging me, tricycle and all, towards the stairs. In my head, it all clicked. He was working for the hand. He'd stuff me into the sack, take me away, and she would finally get me. I slid off the trike and backed away. He shoved it towards the stairs and came after me. I turned and ran, pounding on every door I passed, praying someone would open it. I dare not look back, but I could hear his footsteps behind me. Then, out of nowhere, my mother stepped into the hallway. I crashed into her legs and sobbed. When I looked back, the man was gone. Later, the janitor found my tricycle in the basement. It had been twisted and bent almost beyond recognition. That night, the music came again. The bed shook. The hand reached out. The next day, a kettle of boiling water somehow spilled on me. My mother swore it had been filled with cold water a moment earlier. I was burned badly enough that Grandma took me back to her place to recover. I never spent another night in that dorm. Even now, decades later, I still dream about running down those endless dark hallways, the man with the sack behind me, and always, always that awful music.